Hey YouTube, just watched Dark Ages video about roleplay versus rolling play, and I gotta say I agree with the man. It's just, all of us DMs have been sitting around on our butts the last, 10 years, letting the computer and the video game console tell us what the story is going to be. It looks like we've gotten lazy, and so Wizards of the Coast, in their infinite wisdom, have decided to come out with a system where we don't have to think anymore. And I don't think we've got to roll it that way. I mean, if you really look at it, they're doing the same thing they did to us 30 years ago. They gave us a system and said, go play, go have fun. So we did, and we had a lot of fun. Sometimes a little too much fun. And I wrote this out just as a kind of an example. So I'm going to read this to you, so forgive me, I'm going to lose eye contact. So here's two scenarios I wrote up. One being pure role play, one being me thinking through the rules. So Andrus, the level 2 half-elven cleric, enters a reception hall. He moves 6 spaces into the room, as is allowed to his race class combination for his level. His passive perception score is only a 13, so his dungeon master decides that he would not see the runes to the entryway floor. He steps directly on them, activating a trap in the room, beginning an encounter with him at the disadvantage. A fireball launches itself from the fireplace and begins to move around the room in a random direction determined by the DM's dice roll. The ball moves 8 spaces in any direction, hitting any player or creature in its path for 2d8 plus 1 damage. Andrus and the fireball take turns moving about the room trying to avoid or kill one another, and based upon the remove scores and reflex defenses. Then Andrus decides enough is enough on his turn, and tries to discern how to end the danger of this trap, and tells his DM he wants to try to look for a way to turn off the trap. His DM tells him that he needs to make a history, dungeoneering, or insight check with a DC of 13, and Andrus, who is trained in history, rolls his D20. With a roll of D8 plus his history skill of 7 makes his sum a 15. Success. So his DM then tells him that he notices a mechanism at the other end of the room that should end the threat, and now begins a skill challenge of this encounter, as Andrus is told to make a series of athletics or acrobatics and perception checks to make his way safely across the gauntlet, ending with him disarming the trap and opening a secret door. Okay. Then I wrote the other way. Andrus, level 2 half-elven war cleric, enters a reception hall. Against one wall is a table, and against the other is a bookshelf. There's a fireplace under a large hearth at the end of the room. As he enters the room, he fails to notice the glyph embedded in the floor and trips the room's trap. A fireball shoots out of the fireplace and starts dancing about the room, just begging to find a medium-sized cleric to turn into a medium-sized corpse. Andrus deftly dodges the fire, and over the course of a few turns discerns that there's a mechanism at the other end of the room that he must overcome to disable the trap in the room. He has spent time in his life dealing with several dungeons and was told tales in his learning of dangerous traps and the like, so he knows the basic understanding of how to disable them in this possibly deadly room. Then he decides to make his way carefully across the room and turns off the trap. The fireball fizzles, the fireplace opens, revealing a hidden passage under the hearth. Now that's the same story. It's the exact same story. The only difference is one was told in a purely storytelling mode, where the other was taken into account of a lot of rules. Now, us as dungeon masters, we have the responsibility of deciding what kind of game experience our players are going to have. Do we want them to be staring at their character sheet all day and making rolls based on statistics and math? Well, in some cases, you're going to have to do that. My last session, I indeed had an 11-year-old at the table that may not have the wherewithal or the knowledge to think of, I'm going to Jackie Chan over the table and look for a switch. He probably would have thought, I'm just going to hit the fireball or eat it. Who knows? He's crazy. And at the same table, I had a 40-year-old cleric that's had decades of role-playing experience, where he'd approach it probably in a more thoughtful, creative way. But at the end of the day, the fun of the game comes from our imagination. And it's our job as the referee, as the GM, as the dungeon master, to draw that creativity and imagination out of our players. Some of the most fun I've ever had is when a player, or if I happen to be playing a DM, just pulled something wild out of his back pocket and decided, here, have this, try it, why not? And if you yes and that, we're all going to have fun. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you play. You can play Labyrinth Lord. You can play Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 if you want to. I don't know why you would. But you can play 4th edition. You can play Dragon Age. You can play GURPS. You can play D20. I don't care if you wrote down and just act out cops and robbers. This can be fun. And at the end of the day, the G in RPG is game. We're here to have fun. Just some insight. Thanks, guys. Good night.